fear is one of the ingredients of being a human being. And I want all of the ingredients in my life because I want to be a complete and whole person. And that means sometimes being really afraid.
And then the Renaissance came and everything changed and we had this big idea, and the big idea was let's put the individual human being at the center of the universe, right? Above all gods and mysteries, and there's no more room for like mystical creatures who take dictation from the divine. And it's the beginning of rational humanism, and people started to believe that creativity came completely from the self of the individual. And for the first time in history, you start to hear people referring to this or that artist as being a genius rather than having a genius. And I gotta tell you, I think that was a huge error. You know, I think that allowing somebody, like one mere person, to believe that he or she is like the vessel, you know, like the font and the essence and the source of all divine, creative, unknowable, eternal mystery is just like a smidge too much responsibility to put on one fragile human psyche. It's like asking somebody to swallow the sun, you know? It just completely warps and distorts egos, and it creates all these unmanageable expectations about performance, and I think the pressure of that has been killing off our artists for the last 500 years.
Ela é uma biógrafa, escritora, novelista e ensaísta americana. Seu mais famoso livro, Comer, Rezar e Amar, passou 199 semanas na lista de mais vendidos do New York Times. Ela é Elizabeth Gilbert e esse é o Top 5.
I gotta tell you the truth. My life has not been created by defining moments, and I actually don't know very many people whose lives, if they're honest, are like that. I think we're always looking, it's almost dangerous, we're always looking for the defining moment. We're looking for the sign from God, the lightning strike, Moses coming down from the mountains with the thing. And I think almost as long as you continue waiting for that, you might not actually be on the path of your life, because it's not about the lightning in the bottle moment. Your life is a scavenger hunt, right? It's tiny little clues. Your gaze almost needs to be down here on the ground rather than up in the heavens looking for the big double rainbow. So I don't have one moment where I was like, I have to change my life. I had a 4-year period where I was so unhappy and I was in search, and I followed my hunger, followed my curiosity, and most of all, I just told the truth. And once you tell the truth, you're on the correct path. So it's okay if your life doesn't have these like cataclysmic lightning bolt moments. It's a process, you know, not an instant.
The power of finishing. Because you said something, another genius gem from Big Magic, about, you know, I don't want it to be perfect, I want it to be finished.
Yes.
And that is another one of those things where I'll hear from folks, it's like there's, you know, 15 half-created bridges, things that are just half done, and it tortures them, and they're afraid to start something new because they haven't really developed the habit of getting something out there, even if it's not totally perfect.
Man, this is a huge one. This is a really huge one for women because it's all rooted in perfectionism, which is, of course, the murderer of all good things. Perfectionism is just, it's a serial killer that just goes around killing joy, spontaneity, wonder, grace, humility. It just kills it all. And perfectionism, I think, is a particularly dangerous kind of fear. I always call perfectionism fear in high-heeled shoes because it's fancy. It's like a really fancy haute couture version of fear, because perfectionism can advertise itself as a virtue, and it can trick you into letting it think that it makes you special.
Yes.
Because
you
people
have such high standards.
Yeah, I have such high standards. I'm like, I just can't rest till something. I'm a perfectionist. It's what people say in job interviews as their fault.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, I guess I just care too much, you know?
And you're like,
wow, you're telling me. But what you're telling me when you say that is that it's going to be very hard for you, not only to finish something, but probably to begin something. Because the true perfectionist won't even start because they know already that it's not going to be the thing that they're dreaming of. And their tastes and their standards are so high. There's this woman I recently was talking to who wrote a very successful book maybe 15 or 20 years ago and hasn't been able to write another book since. And I was talking to her about it, and she said, you know, the world's just so full of crap work, and I just don't want to put another piece of crap on the crap pile, so I just won't release this thing until I feel like it's perfect. And I said to her, I am so glad I never took that on as my problem, that the world is full of garbage. Like, how is that your responsibility? This is not your problem. And I was like, it's not my problem if my work isn't good. You know, it's not my problem. It's not even my fault. Like, it's not my problem. My problem, the contract that I made, the only way I finished my first novel, because it wasn't good, because I'd never written a novel before. So why would it be good? Who like wakes up and knows how to write a novel? So I was 50 pages into this thing, and I'm 25 years old, and it's not good, and it's not, I know what a good novel is, and it's not. This isn't working. And, you know, every dignified part of me wants to just put it in the bottom of the drawer and walk away. And then I just had this like warrior moment, and I just remember exactly where I was standing, and I stood up and I said out loud, I never promised the universe I would be a good writer. I just promised the universe I would be a writer. That is the only thing I committed to. This is not my problem. You know, so there's this essential gratitude that I think you have to begin with whenever you're dealing with your fear. And so when my fear arises, the very first thing I do is thank it. Because I know what it's trying to do. It's just trying to help me. It's just trying to protect me. It's just trying to keep me alive. That's it. That's a really amazing gift. And so the first thing I say is, thank you so much. I know you're just trying to save my life. And thank you, by the way, for all the times that you have saved my life. I really appreciate it. But right now, I'm just trying to write an essay. No one's life is in danger. My writing isn't always great, but no one's died from it yet. You know, it's okay. So you have to sort of have this really respectful conversation with your fear. And I also always say to my fear, I recognize that you're part of the family of the many selves that I am. You're welcome to stay in the room. But I just need to explain to you that in this endeavor that we're about to do right now, you don't get to make any decisions, but you get to be in the room. I have the simplest definition in the world for creative living. First of all, let me tell you what it isn't. It isn't necessarily being an artist. It isn't necessarily writing screenplays and novels. It isn't necessarily having an Etsy shop. It isn't necessarily doing things with plaster of Paris, or renovating furniture or having a garden. That's, if you want to do that stuff, that's great. That's great. That's great. But that's not what it means to have a creative life. To have a creative life is simply this. A creatively lived life is any life where consistently, routinely, habitually, and constantly you choose the path of curiosity over the path of fear. Not once, not twice, not a few times, but all the times. All the times. Because you're constantly going to be in these crossroads in your life, daily almost, where there's a lure of curiosity on this side and there's a kind of a roadblock of fear over here saying, take this safer path. I don't know how that one ends. So let's just continue with this. And if you keep going to the right on the fear path instead of going to the left on the curiosity path, your life gets smaller and heavier, which I know is not what you want or what anybody wants. And I say curiosity more than passion, because I think we live in a passion fetishizing society where people are constantly being given this often very unhelpful piece of advice, which is follow your passion, follow your passion, follow your passion, which is all well and good if you happen to have one. But many of us don't, or are between passions, or have multiple things that we're interested in, or don't recognize ourselves in that line, or can't access our passion some random Thursday morning when we didn't sleep well the night before and things aren't going very well, right? Here's what you can always access, your curiosity, right? Passion is the big tower of flame on the hill. It's lightning in a bottle. It's the voice of God. It's all very exciting if you should happen to run into it, but it's not always there. I consider myself a very passionate person, not every day, not even every month. You know, generally I'm passionate, but I can't always channel that. Every single day, you can be curious, because every single day, curiosity approaches you and taps on your shoulder almost to the point that you can't even feel it and whispers in your ear, hey, what's that? Right? And it's a whisper. It's not a shout. It's not Charlton Heston in a robe. You know, it's just like a little tiny clue. It's a scavenger hunt. And if you bother to turn your head an eighth of an inch and just look a little closer at that and investigate it, you've already veered off the path of fear and toward the path of curiosity. And if you keep doing that, you will have a creative life, because your curiosity is different from everyone else's, and it will create a life unique to you.
I finally began to comprehend the strange and unlikely psychological connection in our lives between the way we experience great failure and the way we experience great success. So think of it like this. For most of your life, you live out your existence here in the middle of the chain of human experience where everything is normal and reassuring and regular. But failure catapults you abruptly way out over here into the blinding darkness of disappointment. Success catapults you just as abruptly, but just as far, way out over here into the equally blinding glare of fame and recognition and praise. And one of these fates is objectively seen by the world as bad, and the other one is objectively seen by the world as good. But your subconscious is completely incapable of discerning the difference between bad and good. The only thing that it is capable of feeling is the absolute value of this emotional equation, the exact distance that you have been flung from yourself. And there's a real equal danger in both cases of getting lost out there in the hinterlands of the psyche. But in both cases, it turns out that there is also the same remedy for self-restoration, and that is that you have got to find your way back home again as swiftly and smoothly as you can. And if you're wondering what your home is, here's a hint. Your home is whatever in this world you love more than you love yourself. So that might be creativity, it might be family, it might be invention, adventure, faith, service, might be raising corgis, I don't know. Your home is that thing to which you can dedicate your energies with such singular devotion that the ultimate results become inconsequential.